On the Trump tourney track at this 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening. Olga Lautman is here. Hi, Olga. How are you?
Here.
You're here. You're always so honest about things. And we also have the great Jacob Karsbo, the Danish intelligence officer, former, who's just on the scale, looking very much like a former intelligence officer. Very James Bondy. I can imagine you skiing down hills and doing all sorts of things. Both of you, thank you for being here today, because we've got so much to talk about as we look at what's going on in Minneapolis. The shooting that happened yesterday has already gripped the nation. Tonight we're seeing these extraordinary pictures of protests that are looking quite amped up. These are not the protests we saw earlier on this week. These are really fired up protesters, really provoking ICE officers and agents on the scene, and vice versa. So just to catch everyone up on what we've been getting up late in the last few hours, we found out the name of the shooter. This is the ICE agent which shot the woman in the car the other day. We'll get into the video of that shooting a little later on. But what's really interesting about this guy, Jonathan Ross, is that he had previously been involved in a dragging incident with another immigrant who had driven away with his arm still in the car, the agent's car. In fact, I can show you the video. Why don't we watch the video and then we'll see what we're all talking about here. So this is, if I'm not mistaken, oh no, maybe it didn't transfer. You'll have to rely on my description here. But the video is of basically this, the car is, he has his arm inside the car. This is the agent, and the guy who's being deported drives away, drags him for 300 feet, and then leaves him, quite wounded and sick. Now, all of this seems to me, I don't know, it all begins to feel very coordinated to me, Olga. I'm beginning to feel like there's a storyline that's been manufactured here. And if you've got someone who had previously been involved in a shooting, in a dragging like this, now being positioned almost to be in a shooting like this, it all seems, it's beginning to feel very like almost like an active measure, I would say. You've got that, you've got the immediate response from Kristi Noem to go in right away and declare this woman a domestic terrorist, even before we knew her identity, even before we knew anything about her. And then, and then this continued drumbeat from the administration, from the White House, that this is some sort of ramming incident, which it wasn't. The president sharing a completely fake video, looking like a ramming video that it wasn't. It all has the hallmarks of something very KREMLIN-Y. Olga?
Well, from everything I've seen, I do think it's an organic incident that happened. Frankly, I'm shocked this hasn't happened yet, because you have these, ICE agents and Border Patrol and these federal agents running around acting completely lawless. What the videos that we've seen over the past year are incredible, between smashing windows, jumping in front of cars, ramming cars. So I'm shocked this is the first time it happened. I do think it was, an organic thing that happened. What I do think comes in very KREMLIN-Y is the fact after this happened, how quick you had the propaganda, from Department of Homeland Security, from Vance today. Literally, I was watching Vance today. I was like, am I watching the Russian press briefing or am I watching an American one? Because
Talk to me a little bit more about that. Just explain why that looks so much like a Russian briefing.
Because in Russia, no matter what the event is, whether FSB carries out the event or whether it's an actual attack or some kind of an event that FSB does, had nothing to do with, but then latched on, the security services in Russia, even if they're not responsible for an attack, they are very, very quick to latch on to an attack, which is happening here. So I don't think, that someone in Department of Homeland Security said, gee, let's, go place this woman here and let's, make sure that this cop or federal agent goes and shoots her and causes this. But after the incident, the steps that were taken, everything looks like what would come out of the Kremlin, where you have the Interior Ministry and the security services all immediately coming with, like manufactured event, set
Hmm.
of facts, not facts, set of whatever you want to call it, non-facts, propaganda. And then you have everyone repeat it. So then you have the Russian state media, the Russian propagandists. Everyone is in coordination and they push the same thing, the same videos, the same everything. This is what it feels like. So I do think that she legitimately dropped her son off. You know,
Oh, that I
we
think
don't know.
may have happened. It seems to me that they were, according to Kristi Noem, she was stalking them. I don't know how much we want to take into Kristi Noem's account here, but she says that she was following them all morning, which means that they knew who she was all morning, that they had eyes on
I
her.
don't believe that. I don't believe
Well, that's
any
what
of
she
that.
said.
Anything, yeah, I don't believe anything that came out of Department of Homeland Security, not yesterday
Mhm.
morning, nothing that's coming out from the White House. And frankly, unless we actually have visual evidence of, this agent being dragged over the summer, I wouldn't believe it either. Although it is he operates in Minnesota. So, I mean, the fact of him being involved in multiple, ICE, how you call it, operations wouldn't be out of the norm because this is his area of work.
Yeah, I think
But
this dragging incidents did happen over the summer. I think it's pretty
okay,
much
so it
universally.
happened and happened. I didn't fact
Yeah.
check it, but when I heard it, I was like, oh, until I actually see evidence. But everything coming out from them is a lie. I mean,
Mhm.
every single thing. No, she's not a domestic terrorist. No, she did not go to run over the cop. No, according to Trump, the agent, I keep calling him a cop, the agent, was run over. He wasn't run over. We watched a good 40, 50 seconds of him walking to the car where she was dead. Then walking back, he had no issues. He was on the phone. He was making all different kind of signaling. So I mean, the fact that Trump, said he was was run over and fighting for his life and lucky to be alive. I mean, that's ludicrous because there's video evidence showing otherwise. And this is what I mean when we get into like this, Kremlin-y area, because in the Kremlin, like you could watch something with your own eyes and they will still push their version of events.
That's
You
exactly
know,
the what I'm trying to drive at here is, it does feel to me like there's a prevailing drumbeat that's coming out of the White House that we have to accept as just that is the news. That is what happened. And
yeah,
she's very unlike our traditional way of dealing with things. Jacob,
no.
what do you think of the situation? Are we seeing something that's being completely manipulated by the White House, or at least the reality that we all witnessed and you all saw this video being completely disregarded as being true, and they're introducing their truth?
Well, I think the big thing is what we're seeing is more and more that the White House is acting like the Kremlin. And I was in a Danish radio show already. Was it in May of last year,
Hmm.
where I said to Danish media, when you treat what is coming out of the Trump White House, you have to be as critical and have as much analysis behind it as when you report from Russia.
Hmm.
Because, in a sense, the propaganda is the same and they lie just as much. And I will say this, I would urge everyone to read that book by the former head of the CIA and NSA, General Michael Hayden. He wrote already in 2018 about the dangers of Trump and MAGA, of this whole thing of reality and how important that is for a democratic society. And the reason why we are always sitting here wondering why is Trump doing like Putin is because they think alike, because they don't have a democratic mindset, and they create their own truths and they make the same mistakes actually, because they're not geniuses. But it's the same dictatorial mindset.
as we look tonight,
I would just add one thing that Trump is like really a cheap version, like a 99-cent version of Putin, because Putin, at least with him, he, is very measured. He doesn't come out and just blah, 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 whatever, like he chooses every word very carefully, unlike Trump, who just, basically tells you everything.
We're just watching live video. This is live from Minneapolis tonight as protesters are beginning to gather and have been for the evening, and it's getting quite provocative there. It has all day. There's been various protests and, the provocation on both sides. The ICE agents are saying things that they probably shouldn't be saying to the protesters, and the protesters are being quite taunting towards the ICE agents. This is exactly playing into the kind of this is what the White House really wants. This is a summer of their dreams, to have the same kind of George Floyd uprising that we had before, only now it's going to be about this. And, the concern, I guess, is that we find ourselves in that same scenario, is that we're going to be a very, a heavily violent, very polarizing summer and spring, and one which we don't actually focus on what Trump is really doing, externally with Greenland, externally with Venezuela, internally with ACA and all these other things. This is the kind of clash that is perfect for them.
Yes and no, because you know what? This is the clash that honestly the world really needs to see, because I talk to my, European friends constantly, and, at least a few times a week, I get the question, are Americans alive? And I'm like, what do you mean? And it's like, literally, with Trump getting away with so much, no one can understand why you don't see Americans in the street. So here, seeing scenes like this and pushing back against this federal overreach, I think is healthy. And then, we'll see how far, obviously, Trump is going to take the most he can out of this, maybe try to invoke the Insurrection Act, send more federal agents. He'll do what Trump is, going to do regardless. But here, at least you have the people pushing back. And frankly, everyone should be out, because what happened yesterday is insane. We have these lawless thugs running around, and anyone who works, honestly, in Border Patrol or the Department of Homeland Security or ICE, who, is uncomfortable with what is happening within their agencies, really needs to resign and come and speak up, because, what happened yesterday, if we ignore this, we go into a territory like Russia, where, people get disappeared and killed and tortured very publicly, and, everyone's walking around with their business. So this, I'm actually very, happy to see.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, and I will say that the big danger, and what everyone should realize, I will say that the closer we get to the elections next year for Congress, and the worse they look, the prospect looks for Trump, the more we are likely to see of this, because he created January 6th. And why do people believe that he'll just let the democratic process play out? That is naivety, and I can't prove it, but I will say, when I look at what is happening, the likelihood that this will get even worse as we approach the elections this year, this is likely to get worse, because he needs something to justify that he can hold on to power, and that he can suspend Congress, like he has suspended Congress.
That's a very good point,
and I think that's going to get worse. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we think about George Floyd that summer as well. There was Kyle Rittenhouse, that event where Kyle Rittenhouse was in Kenosha, and suddenly there was this, again, felt like a constructed violent event, in order to amplify the violence, in order to amplify the chaos in the country. And this time you're right. We know that he wants to stay in power. We know that he's desperately fearful of impeachment. We know he really needs these Republicans to maintain the House. So he will do anything, or could do anything, to maintain power. And that would be very Kremlin-y as well. Olga?
Absolutely, but I believe in the American people, and I do think that they have the same, you know, like what is it called? The same like power like Ukrainians did. So with Ukrainians, when Yanukovych tried to do this, we all see how that ended. And Ukrainians had 2 successful revolutions pushing back against government overreach, against Burkhardt running around shooting protesters. The heavenly over 100 who were murdered during the Revolution of Dignity. So I think Americans have the same spirit, and I think that if the more Trump pushes, the more regular Americans will be involved. Because I saw even on social media, Americans yesterday, saying that I normally don't get involved in these things, but what I saw was outright murder. And to add insult to injury, not only did you see the federal overreach of, federal agents executing a woman for trying to leave the scene. They're giving her mixed instructions: leave, open your door, and she's like, okay,
reverse at the time,
leave. She was in reverse. You see her wheel turning. And then to have Kristi Noem and Vance and, the rest stand there and actually tell Americans who with their own eyes have seen every angle. We've seen every angle, thanks to social media pushing it in our algorithms, of this murder. To tell them that this was a domestic terrorist who was sitting in the car backing up, trying to get away from the scene because she's following instruction. And Border Patrol is not supposed to harass an American citizen. Like,
Absolutely
what the
not.
fuck is Border Patrol doing, even stopping or opening her door? She is a U.S. citizen. They have no right to even be there to open her door. That's a law enforcement issue, not a federal issue. So I think that's only going to get more people outraged. And I even saw among MAGA crowd, who were saying we can't, justify this. This is definitely overreach. So we'll see. I do have faith, and they're going to try to push back and use everything they can. But like I always say, there's more of us than them. And I think, power in the numbers and people.
Jacob?
Yeah, I fully agree, but I will say we need to keep warning about what the intentions are, because as an intelligence officer, we look at intentions and we look at capacity, and those 2 things match what Trump is going to do, and we have to keep warning the public, because the public needs to deal with this.
Right.
The public needs to get America back on track. But, besides just the Trump administration, there are terrible trouble with the whole media landscape, with the way propaganda is spreading, and, conspiracy theories and all that nonsense. And that's what's polluting the American society now. And it's the American people that needs to stop this somehow.
Absolutely. I think speaking of propaganda, I did an analysis yesterday where I looked at the video that Trump had shared with everybody of the shooting, which was a weird angle that he sent out, and it looked very slowed down. When we did the analysis, it turned out it had been put into a lower resolution. It had been compressed through Rumble. That looks like there's all sorts of aberrations in the video. And one of the things I did in the analysis here is I upscaled the video as well to take a look to see what would happen if I upscaled it. And in the video that Trump shares, you can actually see it looks weirdly like there's the van is running over somebody, because it's taken from a different angle, and there's a weird fragmentation of the video. And now we were able to see exactly what they did when we upscaled it. So I'm going to show you the comparison, and it's just an indication of how complex the propaganda really is. So the video you're seeing here on the left, is the original video that we've all seen many times. And on the right is the one that he's added and has been upscaled. I sped it up so it matches the one you're seeing on the left, and I'll show it to you again. And it's just so. Here's look at it as a close up. If you just look right at the front of the car, you see there's this weird black shape that almost looks like it's forming around the vehicle and then goes under the vehicle. It looks like two legs that disappear. That is, I think, a manipulation. I think it's one of those things that would not have been there in the original video. Obviously, I think they've added it through animation, and then they've made it look like there's someone being potentially run over. Now, it doesn't look like someone's being run over because it's obviously not working as well as they want, but.
No.
but it's this is Trump sharing a video that looks to me wholly manipulated out of someone's basement, and he's using this to justify his whole notion that the officer here, the agent, was somehow going to be rammed or went to hospital, all sorts of things that he made up in his statement yesterday.
Yeah, that one got me. That the agent is in the hospital, basically fighting for his life. We watched him walk back and forth. Look, the agent did get tapped by the car. The New York Times did the analysis. Wall Street Journal did several.
Did not get hit. You say the agent did not get hit or did get hit?
No, did. He got tapped. He did get tapped, and New York Times, several agencies did a very slow analysis. He got tapped. He didn't get hit. He got tapped. What every single thing coming out of these videos from all the angles that you see, he was never supposed to be there. Because the Department of Homeland Security protocol specifically says that if a car is in drive, whether it's going backwards, forwards, any which way, unless it's coming straight at you, they are supposed to disengage. He's supposed to step back. They have the license plate number. They have the make and model of the car. They can easily, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, put an APB out on the car and pull the car over,
That makes sense.
Somewhere down. This is their thing. And every single FBI agent who has watched this video, every single Department of Homeland, Secret Service agent, has said the same thing. The Department of Homeland Security guidance says that an agent is supposed to disengage. And if there is a car, heading, you're supposed to step aside, allow the car to go, not only for the safety, because they've already gone through this where you have these lawless, rent-a-cops who are getting 40 plus days training, who literally have already shot at each other. I mean, imagine there have been a few incidents. They shot at the local marshals, another one at local police officers. So the reason that there is this disengagement policy, that's a very long-standing policy, is one, so you don't kill a driver and have a car operating without control, because there could have been kids right there. There could have been anyone. And she could have, not her, the poor woman.
That's exactly what happened, right? I mean, this poor woman died because of this overreaction by ICE. Now, I haven't seen that analysis that he had been tapped. And all the videos that I've seen, I've seen
tapped. He was tapped. I mean, from the analysis done by several media outlets, again, from the angles that they have.
I've looked at it. I think I've looked at every available angle. I think it's really hard to see if he got tapped, and he looked quite far away from the actual window, and he shot it into the window of the driver's seat. Not through the front. The shot came through the window, and he had his arm fully outstretched. Which put him at least a foot and some away from the car window.
Well, that's the whole point. That, I mean, he had enough time to take out the gun and shoot through the windshield first. In that time, he could have stepped aside and they could have pulled the car down the road if they felt there was a need to arrest her or to question her or to do anything. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, but I mean, in the larger scheme of things, ICE is not law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a militia.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of what I saw when I worked in the Middle East for the more than 10 years. It's a militia. And it's like Trump is not a politician. He's a cult leader. That's what we're seeing. And it's got no place in a democracy.
Certainly not in suburban
That's
Minneapolis, where young mothers are driving their kids around. It seems, just so ridiculous that this is happening in a place like that. I want
Funny, just to add, I wrote an article last summer that this ice reminds me of Rosgvardia because they're literally using the same tactics as in Russia.
yeah,
It
Yeah,
does
these
all look like
laws.
that. It does.
Yeah,
Everything looks
I
like
have
very
an article.
Kremlin-y. It just,
Yeah,
everything is very Kremlin-y. It just, I can't get away from it. And I want to play you a little bit from Vance today because, the calculation he's making here, let's take a listen to it's stunning that he's adding all these things together and then calling the media propaganda.
I'm sorry, guys. What's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video?
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I am certain of is that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly, and some of you...
We could just leave him there, but it's agents of propaganda. The media telling the truth have become the agents of propaganda, while the guy spewing propaganda from the White House, podium is saying he's the master of truth. Everything seems so reversed, Olga.
Well, this I honestly blame the press because, frankly, they are behaving identical to the media. I mean, not identical. I'll give them a little bit, more, but to what is in Russia, where technically they should be either pushing back or just get up and leave.
Yeah.
Either you say this is propaganda, or you get up and leave if you don't want to have that altercation. But to maintain, this access journalism, which has really been the downfall way before Trump, the downfall of U.S. media, that they feel that they cannot, fully push back and do their job and act like journalists because they want to get their sources and their scoops and all the other thing and treat this like theater. This is why we're here. And the fact that you have a full room of journalists, half of them are propagandists. They're not even journalists. But the other half, that you have serious agencies, media outlets sitting there and allowing him to go on like this is honestly ludicrous.
Just let's wrap it up here, but go ahead, Jacob.
It's like watching Comical Ali in Baghdad back in the day. I mean...
No, I was trying to just show everyone today that there's so many elements of Kremlin craft over here, whether it's the manipulation of videos, whether it's the coordinated narratives, whether it's the stoking of tensions and polarization. It just feels like the whole thing is being puppeted out of the Kremlin right now. And maybe it isn't. Maybe they've just learned all the stuff that they need to domestically, and now they're operating on their own. But it still feels like this is Russian. this is Russia almost in the United States.
Well, the tactics are definitely very Russian-esque. I can tell you the Russians are fuming right now. I don't know. I actually have never enjoyed Telegram like I have the past few days and Russian media, because you have had literally Russian, one senator threatened to nuke the United States, to a very, very popular Telegram propagandist, military blogger, threatened that the orange pedophile needs to be assassinated. So we're back to assassination.
Why are they upset with him?
And they're very angry with Trump, not only over the oil seizures, the ship seizures, because frankly, I mean, if you read, if you monitor Telegram channels right now, they're questioning, like Putin's usefulness, like maybe he's old and just needs to get out of power, because I mean, you literally, I don't think there's anything, and I can tell you from the mentality, there's nothing more humiliating than to see a video of Russian Navy ship standing right there and Americans coming down and seizing a Russian reflagged ship. There's nothing more humiliating for them. And this hits at the mentality and at that superiority. And now they're really questioning very publicly, whether Putin has lost his game and it's time for him, to he's past his expiration date. So, but the tactics that Trump and MAGA use, they have been. I mean, since the first term, they've been very, very in line with, how Russia carries out its operations, the propaganda, the information warfare, and everything else that happens domestically.
I kind of let Jacob go without asking about Greenland. We had a statement from European leaders defending Greenland and saying that they will defend Greenland. And next week, I guess Marco Rubio is going to be making an offer for Greenland when he goes to Denmark or something like that. It's what is your, you're monitoring from across the pond here, but what's your sense of what's going on there?
That whole proposition that a meeting with Marco Rubio will help clarify anything is nonsensical and naive. Marco Rubio will throw sand into the eyes of the decision makers at best, and what's really at stake here is something quite different. And Trump said it today. He said that the Greenland issue could be a choice between Greenland or NATO. Why? Because Trump doesn't want NATO. He doesn't subscribe to NATO. Trump is in violation of the articles in the NATO treaty already. And Congress should hold him to account. But of course, the GOP in Congress is part of this cult and are collaborators. So, but, if they had any sense, they would hold Trump accountable for breaking a treaty that the US has signed. But Trump is in violation of the NATO treaty. That cannot be discussed. And that's how crazy it is.
Yeah, we already are looking at a major break.
And as I'm saying to the Europeans and the Canadians alike, this just tells us that NATO is meaningless with Trump at the helm in the US, and we can't rely on that. And we need, as Europeans, Canadians, to have a proper alliance with the same content.
Absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, Olga.
Just to add, I put out a call because I did a whole show this morning on Pax Americana, and that is soon not going to be Pax Americana. I put out a call for anyone watching to call Congress, because frankly, two things. I mean, if Americans say who cares, or whatever, there are two things that they should care. One, if Trump attempts to invade Greenland, which I absolutely see him using military force, Europe is just going to ban Americans from ever coming. So if they ever want to see Italy, France, or any other destination in Europe and want to be actually admitted into the country, call your senators, call your Congress people, tell them, this is unacceptable what we're doing to our ally and whatnot. And two, I mean, they also need to tell their senators and make a big stink about this, because if Trump continues down this path, which I fully believe, and I warned over a year ago that he was going to. How many times have we discussed
Yeah, we spoke about it all the time.
over the past year, that Trump would do this and potentially Canada, and the reason he's going after them is to end NATO. Americans will be kicked out of every military base. So if Americans want to maintain, their positions in Germany, in France, and across Europe, Congress needs to do it. And if they have found enough balls today to actually pass the War Resolution Act.
And they did it after the fact, though. They could have done it before the Venezuela's attack. To do it now is a little bit, it's a little...
Yeah, but we don't know because, just like I remember very clearly, I'm old enough to remember Bush standing mission accomplished on top of his thing. That was in, 2002? And then we are still in 20.
But it would be nice if they did a Greenland resolution type thing now, not until after he tries something,
No, they need, and that's why I put out a poll this morning, like everyone needs to call their Congress people, right? Call and say, what in the hell is going on? Because this is not going to end up good for America, and we cannot let one man do this. And I do believe there's enough in the House and in the Senate where you can find, a veto-proof majority to say, no, we cannot invade Greenland or any NATO country. Not Canada, not Greenland, no one.
We should wrap up now because we're 10 minutes over. But Jacob, is there anything you want to tell people about? Firstly, have a good après-ski and I hope you enjoy it. But also secondly, anything you want to say about what you're writing about or working on for your Substack, which everyone should subscribe to? It's terrific.
Yeah, thanks. Well, the one thing is I have a book coming out on 5th of February. I'm not sure when the English version of the book is coming out. It's called Subverted. And I'm actually describing a lot of these things and holding these tactics and techniques that the Trump administration is using up against what Putin is doing and describing the dual threat to Denmark and Europeans alike from these two actors.
That's out on February the 5th in Danish, but we don't know when it's going to come out in English.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I'll still try read it in Danish. I'll gotta brush up on it. And your Substack is Jacob Karsbo. Is there a name for it as well, or is it just at Jacob Karsbo?
It's just at Jacob Karsbo. Okay. I'll work on a name.
You don't need one. It's a good name you got already. And Olga Lautman, everyone knows from the Trump Tyranny Track and Unmasking Russia. What are you working on right now, Olga?
I want to take this time to tell people to please pray for Ukraine tonight because before we went on air, the terrorists decided because they, feel humiliated. So they took it out on Ukraine and reportedly sent an Oreshnik a missile into Lviv. And they slammed a bunch of apartment buildings in Kiev. I mean, literally, you see people, apartments in high rises burning and fires from drones, slamming into it. It shows you how pathetic they are because, to use their Oreshnik, it's that's basically they're retaliating against Trump. Because they're embarrassed, that their ship got taken, so they're taking it out on Ukrainians, and also sending a key message to Poland because the fact they decided to launch it in Lviv, that's literally on the border with Poland. So please pray. The attack is still ongoing. Yeah. Last I checked, hundreds of drones over Kiev and a big mess in Lviv.
Wow, what a difficult reality for the Ukrainians. Well, thank you both for being here tonight. I appreciate you both and all your work at Olga Lautman, the Trump Tyranny Track at Unmasking Russia, and Jacob Karsbo. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.